नहीं इज इट फाइन? दिस इज बेटर ना, इधर आके बैठ के देखो, टेढ़ा है, ठीक है। लाइट ऑन और ऑन कर दी क्या हुआ है? हाँ लाइट ऑन करते तो चलेगा नहीं बट प्रोजेक्टर का सुमैया प्रोजेक्टर एक बार देख लो। It is brightness focus करना पड़ेगा. This is better, right? The angle. Okay. I'll keep it focused. Ma'am, no, it's fine. Yeah. Sure. राधिका राधिका
morning everyone. Welcome to Deendal Upadhyay College, ZEST, English Literary Society of the Department of English. And today we will be having a guest lecturer, Dr. Nandini, who teaches English in Bharati College, University of Delhi. She was a fellow at the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shillong. She is the recipient of Charles for his fellowship for academic research in London, the ambassador for Peace Prize for towards educating slum dwellers, the Right India Award for Creative Writing, and the Best Lecturer Award by the Delhi government. She writes on diaspora studies, African studies, and comparative literature. Some of her academic publications include The Blackwood Speaks, a study of Flora Nova and the Emigida in 2019, Through the Diasporic Volume 1 and 2, 2017 and 2018, Mahashweta Devi Critical Perspectives in 2012. Her short stories have been featured in literary journals such as the Elusive Genre and The News. She has been featured in the Asian Collective of Short Stories and the Australia-India collaboration, The Glass Books. Her recent book, The Second Life and Other Stories, is a collection of particularly facts. Professor Nandini will now
sit. The second semester students are also here. So, before you begin the formal introduction, I'll give you welcome. Sit down, everyone. So, this is. Yeah, I know. Absolutely. All the show. That was when I walked in. We are also waiting for Vishal. Ask me the others also will take a mandatory quick photo. Yeah. So this is a great opportunity. Thanks to all of you for coming in for this special lecture. I know this is the last week and all of us are rushed for various things. But thanks to Dr. Nandini that she could make time for us on a very short notice. And though we have known each other because we all are fraternity in the Department of English, except that we could find a window and find an opportunity to get her here today. Come, all the faculty members will take a quick photo with her, and then you will make the formal introductions. I hope your formal introductions are ready with you.
I kind of forced them to introduce me. They were almost reluctant to do it.
Oh my God, did you not formally introduce her?
We did wait.
After the sport.
Now we will leave you to her, make the best of this opportunity, ask as many questions after she finishes her presentation like this. And that's it. We'll take it from the Indian writings in English and Indian writings in translation.
I don't know if I can do the translation, but Indian writing in English.
Whenever. Whatever. ठीक है. It's on that note. You need a coffee tea in between.
I will tell the girls.
These girls will help.
So, introductions apart, for half the population we are mostly but absolute pleasure and many thanks to Anuha who is not here now, but who must have been here. And I'm glad that we could arrange this. We've been talking about, organizing sessions for students, and somehow something works, something doesn't work. All of us have millions of professional and other responsibilities. So I'm glad that this is happening, and I'm particularly happy for all of you, and particularly guys who are the backbenchers there. Having taught for 1 million years, I'm going to be looking at you guys more than I'm going to look at you. So coming back to, I did, Anuha wanted me to do the translation portions of DSC 11 and 12. I wish I could have done it, but this, just an overview of Indian writing in English, because it's huge, it's very vast. So that in itself is taking up a lot of my time and energy. But if you still want me to do the translation, so after I'm done with this, I will take your questions. If you still feel you want an overview of the translation, I'll be more than happy to. Because these are related subjects. But here, in this particular session, I'm going to be talking about Indian writing in English. This is your DSC 11 paper, as all of you know it. And what I'm going to do here is, I'm going to give you an overview. So I'm going to give you an introduction to how do we have, what is the concept of Indian writing. Pardon me students, maybe I'll be repeating myself because I've been taking, I've been meeting some of you all in class. And maybe I don't repeat myself because I will be giving you guys a lot of information. If you feel it's an information overload, I can always keep the slides. But it's always good to have an information overload. You can make the connections there. So the genesis, where do we get this term? Where and how do we understand, where did this whole business of Indian writing in English come from? It comes from a guy who we desperately want to not remember. A guy who we want to forget completely, Lord Macaulay. He was a colonialist. He ruled over our country. He forced us. He forced a language. He forced an education down our gullet. So obviously we don't want to remember him. But if we are going to be tracing the genesis, we don't have a choice. We have to go back into the past, which brought us here. So what did Macaulay say? Why did the whole business of English learning start? Look at the quote. He says, it is impossible for us with our limited means to attempt to educate the body of the people. Now here is this British gentleman talking about the Indians. So we can't educate all of them. We must at present do our best to form a class who may be interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern. A class of persons, Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. So So this class, we may need it to refine the vernacular dialects of our country, to enrich the dialects in terms of the science borrowed from the Western nomenclature, and to render them by degrees fit vehicles for conveying knowledge to the great mass of population. So you and I, willy-nilly, are that class of people who are busy interpreting for the West or interpreting to the West what millions of our countrymen think and feel. So somewhere, of course, things have changed. I will talk to that as well. But this was the genesis. This is how it started. So educating Indians wasn't exactly an altruist idea. It didn't come organically. The feeling wasn't that, oh, let us bring in education. The reason was very clear. We needed translators. We needed intermediaries. So who better to do all that than a whole class of people? To create a whole class of people who will do that. Anyway, anything you don't understand, feel free to ask. So English education was introduced in India in the 19th century. It was available to the vast Indian community. By introducing this education, the British wanted to create and maintain a class of administrative officers, clerks, civil servants to manage this huge country properly. So the number of British people living and operating in India, as we know, was very limited. So we needed a whole bunch of people to do their dirty work for them. So the whole business came. So Macaulay's Minutes on India Education, 1935, and another gentleman who again we're going to forget, but we can't, Lord Bentinck's decision to promote European literature and science amongst the Indians ensured that many Indians could now use an alien term for creative expression. So this is something that I've been talking over and over again, and this is an area which we will keep coming back to, in a loop. It's like, this is an area which we cannot let go of. And what is this area that we are talking about? The concept of, the introduction of English education in India, the difficulty faced by many Indians who felt that they were being forced to create in an alien country. So the difficulty of having to do a creative piece of work, not mere communication, but a creative piece of work in an alien country. And that is something that we will keep addressing in Indian writing in English, the language question. We have to keep coming back to it because that continues to remain, even today, the central question of the entire day. Are you with me till here, all of you? Backbenchers there? So Indian writing has a very recent history, which is 1.5 centuries old. Literature has passed through several phases, such as Indo-Anglican, Indo-English, Indian writing in English, and finally, what we now call Indian English literature, or Indian writing in English. So I will be quoting KRS Iyengar, who says, there are 3 types of Indian writers in English. First, those who have acquired their entire education in English schools and universities. Second, Indians who are settled abroad. So now we are talking about diaspora literature. So another large chunk of Indian writing in English comes from the diaspora. So you have Indian writers in English who are born and brought up here, having gone to English medium schools and being able to write in English. And then you have the diaspora writers who are also impacted in English. And finally, the third are the people who have acquired English as a second or third language. You will also have people like that who, for whom English is definitely, they've probably not gone to an English medium school, probably don't read and write in English, but have acquired English as a second language or a third language, but still choose to write in this language. Clear to everybody? Yes. So, what makes Indo-Anglican literature not just a ramshackle outhouse of English literature, in the question of Indian? So, how Indian is Indian writing? So, are we going to say, that this is a foreign tongue, writing in this foreign tongue makes the entire enterprise very foreign? Are we going to say that? Is it a foreign enterprise, writing in English? My students don't answer. Other students give me an answer. So writing in English, we are all, this is an acquired tongue for us in so many ways, and we are communicating in this language. We are writing in this language. So are we performing a foreign act, or are we performing a regular act?
So no language per se belongs to a specific group of people. English in India has been Indianized. So it is the Indianized English which we use and speak in and all of that, communicate. So I won't say that it is something which belongs to the Britishers or the English people. We have a part of it and we own it per se.
Okay, that's
In
a
that
great
sense.
answer. I will add to it, but not just now. It's like cricket. Do we say cricket belongs to the Britishers? It used to at once upon a time. Now, not only have we internalized it, we have owned it completely. So that's precisely what we have done, but we've done a little more than that. We have tried to legitimize the language, and I will come to that a little. Professor Meenakshi Mukherjee, one of the scholars you will have her in your the readings. She has been prescribed, and I cannot help but boast. Ma'am taught me in my JNU days, one of the most brilliant professors I've had the honor of being taught by. So Professor Mukherjee was one of the earliest writers who started impacting on Indian writing in English. One of the, when you're talking Indian writing in English, there are some critics. One is Srinivasan Iyengar, one is Meenakshi Mukherjee. These are people you'll have to keep going back to. They are historians. Okay. So what is MM saying? Whatever the language is which is written, a novel by an Indian writer demands direct involvement in values and experiences which are valid in the Indian context. So this is what makes it good. The language might be foreign. The language might not be something that is your mother tongue. But the experiences that are narrated in this literature is very definitely your and my experience, which makes it our literature. Clear till here? Now there are no subject or no piece of writing or no literature comes without its own share of problems. So here there are many inherent problems as well. It's not a problem-free zone. So what are the basic problems when we have a umbrella term like Indian writing? There's bound to be many problems. One is that it may seem strange that Indian writing in English, even today, continues to be a bone of contention in the literary world, even after its writers have won national and international acclaim. So we've had Booker awardees. Could you name some Booker awardees from India?
Arundhati Roy.
Okay. Anyone else? We got the Booker of Books. Okay, so but he's more a diaspora writer because he's not lived in India, but yes, of course, so coming back, in spite of the fact that we've won national and international awards, it's very much it's part of your course curriculum. But even then, there is this hesitation where it is felt that there's something foreign about it. It's not entirely Indian because the language that is being used is a quote-unquote foreign language. It is not a language which is used commonly by the average Indian. So that is what creates a bit of a distance. And the second problem that we seem to have is that many writers and critics in other Indian languages seem to believe that it is impossible for Indians to do creative writing in English since it's an alien language whose cultural register and verbal associations are inaccessible. So it's like saying that there are certain Indianisms which you cannot translate because the cultural register is so different. You cannot translate it in any which way, and you cannot give it to how do I say it? You cannot. It's like a meal that you've cooked, and you said that this is Indian, but it cannot be paroso, it cannot be given because there are certain some things which are very which cannot be transliterated or translated. And I can give you some random examples, like ye khana jhula. How do you translate it? And even if you translate it by saying it has been touched or it is dirty or it is, you can get as close. Are you conveying the entire cultural register? For let's suppose somebody who's not in India is reading about it, they could seriously wonder, they could totally not get the connotation the way we will get it immediately. खाना झूठा है मतलब एक कुछ चीजें होती है जो हमें पता है कि वो क्या है, वो हम बयान नहीं कर सकते, वो हम उस हिसाब से लिख नहीं सकते. So that is why a lot of regional writers have felt that how they can express themselves. I mean, if we are talking, let's say, of great summer, which won this year's award, showcasing of the land, the writer herself, where she's constantly talking about writing, the reason why she writes in. She might be translated. The minute she's finished writing, she's the translation one of the award. But she feels that what she could write in her own language, the cultural registers of her own language, does not translate a foreign language. So the creativity becomes, therefore, it becomes slightly daunting or it becomes difficult. Are you with me till here? Agree, disagree? And the argument is that it is rootless, devoid of any specific identity. It is neither English literature nor Indian literature. So it's na yahan ka na wahan.
Is it a problem with the translation or the literature? Like as you're talking about, neither a part of English literature or anything.
One would say, and I'm not part of that one, but people can say this question does arise, that when I read something in its original language, let's say if I read Tagore in original, and if I read Tagore in translation, somewhere I feel a lot has gone missing. Having said that, of course, thanks to the translation, he is being accessed by so many people who do not otherwise, who are not Bengali readers. So it's both the things. Yeah.
Can it be said that all the literature that we write in English is but a translation?
Sometimes, I think that's a very smart thing to say, because sometimes that's exactly what is happening. Without realizing, you're translating in your mind.
Yeah.
See, there will be some people who will think in English, because that's the only language you have. But you've been educated in that language, you've internalized it so much, it becomes your language. There will be another set of people who will think in another language, but English also being very much a language in their mind, they are translating in their mind. So what do you think?
So I don't believe there is any section in India.
Please guys, let's have the conversation like this.
I don't believe there is any section in India which is not bilingual, and even if they are, none of their first language is English. So that.
Which is where the problematizing has happened. That if such is the situation, then how much are we really and truly being able to put forward, because our cultural registers sometimes cannot be expressed the way we would want to express it. And sometimes we try to oversimplify it, making it quite complex. I remember reading something about a triangular, crispy, what was it?
Samosa.
And for the life of me, I kept wondering whatever was a triangular, crispy, samosa is a samosa. But to call it a triangular, crispy something, I'm seriously wondering, what on earth is it? So imagine now I say Lata was eating a triangular, crispy, potato-filled
Pastry, yes.
I'm seriously wondering what Lata was eating. A simple thing like Lata was chopping on a samosa with green chutney, so it makes so much more sense to us. But like I keep saying, the mistake would be if we throw the baby with the bathwater. If we say that, because these problems are there, let us not venture into the water, then we are really not making sense. Because the idea to negotiate with problems is how do we solve it and how do we make it so what are people doing now? People are no longer, the writers are no longer translating. The writers are writing the Indian words. The writers are writing the words from their own culture and I'm expecting you to go there and find out what it is, rather than translating the whole thing and making it accessible as it used to be done. I'll come to that also later. So I keep coming back, and this is going to be my focus throughout Indian writing in English. Remember, when we discuss Indian writing in English, the one thing we are constantly going to be talking about is the politics of language. It has existed. It has existed since time immemorial. So it's the third largest English using nation. Look at the staggering statistics: 35 million users of the language. It has the status of an associate official language in the Constitution. It is the state language of 4 states and of most union territories. And it has one of the largest network of English print media with a pan-Indian circulation, and is one of the world's 3 major book publishers in English. So we have all of this going for us. In spite of that, we keep saying, or the dominant understanding is that it is not our language because it's not our mother tongue. It's an acquired language. It is also the primary language of inter-regional interaction across the country, and it is getting fast assimilated into Indian languages. This is what I was going to say. So we have the Sahitya Academy since 1977 has been giving an award for the best writing in English. So English is now officially looked at as an Indian language. So English is no longer, and that's very important for all of you to know since you are English honors students. Are you majoring in a foreign language? No. You are majoring in an Indian language which might not have been born in India, but which has been assimilated and which has been adopted and has become a part of the milieu of our country.
Weren't we forced to adopt English? So how can we call English?
We were forced, yes, at one point in time. But then eventually, once it's like, you were the Caliban example that I keep giving you, Prospero and Caliban. So there was a time when Prospero dominated over Caliban, and then Caliban picked up his language and learned to abuse Prospero in his language. So we accepted it, we took it. There was a time when it was forced upon us, till we not only accepted it, we internalized it and we made it up. And I will show you the trajectory. It didn't happen overnight. It took its time. But over time, we not only accepted it, we not only said this is our language, we actually internalized, technified it, made it up. So English has also entered, as we all know, India's linguistic and literary creative. So it is no longer, when can you actually do literary work in any language? When your comfort level with that language is so much that you can learn to create in that language. So I'm sure all of you have heard that Akbar Birbal story. Remember there was one guy who comes to Akbar's court and he can speak multiple languages.
Right.
And he says, okay, guess
Which is my
guess my language. Guess my mother tongue. And nobody can. And then Birbal has water poured over him and then he swears in his mother tongue. But for many of us who have probably gone to English medium schools, studied in a certain kind of a milieu, speak in a certain manner, I feel that maybe if they poured water on us, we would swear, but we swear in English. So that whole, it's a loss of a language, it's definitely loss of a language, but maybe it is also gaining a certain language. So we have willingly accepted it, made it our way, as simple as that, for good or for bad. That's very easy. Gentlemen, here you have something to ask. You are agreeing with things. Because you guys are terribly outnumbered, so don't be scared. You can ask questions. So, literature and translations into English of European works have had a profound impact on Indian creativity. And of course, this charge will never go, the charge of elitism. The very fact that we are in this air-conditioned, fancy room, speaking in English, we know that probably, I don't have the statistics with me, but you can always Google and check later, that 1% of the women probably make it to Bangalore. So, willy-nilly we are part of that 1%. because it is elitist, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but to understand that these are the problems that we have. Okay? So now this, to speak in favor of Indian writing in English and to speak in favor of English, you have Srinivasan saying this, that to dismiss the 20% of Indians who live in cities as unreal is dishonest. Urban reality is part of Indian reality. So our reality is as much part of the Indian reality. You can say that, the village, the farmer, absolutely. That is one reality, but the urban reality also exists. The English reality also exists. So a common world of concepts, beliefs, rituals, attitudes, say by a Kannada novel like Nandini Samskara, please read. It's mind-blowingly brilliant. And of course Raja Rao's Kanthapura. I don't know how much you enjoy reading Kanthapura, but definitely you should read the foreword because the foreword is also there as part of your background reading, and I will discuss it also. So Indian English writers bring into the very fabric of their writing what they have learned from the Indian language. So the interesting thing which you were saying, the very fact that we are all bilingual and some of us might be trilingual. So we bring the sensibilities of all of those languages when we are writing in whichever is our chosen language. Okay? So if today I write in English, it's probably my first language, having had a certain kind of education. But my sensibility as a Bengali, my understanding of Hindi, my being able to very effectively read and write in two other languages will also find its way into that English. So effectively, we bring our sensibilities from different cultural and linguistic zones into our writing in English. All of you with me till here?
Yes, ma'am.
So what we were discussing, so then what do we need to do? We need to technify. We need to decolonize the language. We need to snatch it away from the Queen's English. We are no longer doing the Queen's English. We are doing our own brand of English, where we will very happily say Lata was eating with a chumach a yellow samosa or a crispy samosa. And that will very definitely also be as acceptable as, let us say, something written in perfect grammar in the Queen's English. So, decolonization of English. What do I mean by decolonization? From the colonial hand, we have taken it, we have made it our own, and we have decolonized it. Clear? All the terms still here? It's a term used by Black Africa. Next year when you do post-colonial literatures, this will actually add to it. So then we are going to be talking colonization, racism, decolonization, and so on. So the pristine purity of languages before they were affected by English, nor can the post-colonizer hope to jettison or museumify Indian languages with their great creative traditions, which are 20th century, says Sachin. Another critic. What is Sachidananda arguing? He's saying that all the languages have to be like rivers. You have to keep flow. The minute you stop it, the minute you say, oh, the purity of the language is getting lost, then the language will die. If the language is flowing beautifully, it can flow into each other. And words from different meters and languages. Last I heard, Ayo was an English word in the Oxford Dictionary. So the reason why English is doing how wonderfully it is doing, because it is very ready to attack. So Ayo is now an English word. So Ayo Rama might be an English word. So if I have to say Ayo, now I cannot translate it. That feeling only will not come. So we have to keep it ready. So this is the beauty, and similarly, like in Bangla, there's been so much of influx of English. I can't speak so much for Hindi, but I'm not going to give you the Hindi examples. In Bengali, we call a table, a chair, a chair. I don't know if there are any Bengali words for them. If there are, you guys might tell. I have no idea. So languages, so if languages are free flowing, if they interact and impact upon each other, take from each other, use each other, in a way respecting each other and using each other, then we have this harmonious situation of all languages getting equal amount of respect and all languages freely flowing into each other. But the minute we make it into like a museum or a language, our language is very pure. Do not touch, do not encroach, the language will die. As simple as that. With it in here, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Guys, at some point of time, I will need a strong coffee or a chat or anything, whatever you can get. But don't give me that coffee without coffee. Yeah, I was given some coffee with great deal of love, which was only I'm not happy with that.
Do you want charge?
Would you like some charge? Maybe yes.
So, Sahitya Academy's attitude, all of you know where Sahitya Academy is, right? Yes. Mandi House? Sahitya Academy's attitude of considering English as a legitimate literary language in India is probably the most appropriate attitude that we can have towards English as a language of creativity, which is no more or less important than any other Indian language. It is as important as any other language. And the first Sahitya Academy Award was given to none other than R.K. Narayan, who you all know, for his novel Guide. And I don't know, this is way before your times, in fact, way before even your parents' time. But Guide is a film.
Yes, ma'am. Rajesh Khanna.
With starring Vaida Rana, looking very beautiful. She's really before your time. Has anybody seen that?
Heard from
Yes, the songs are very beautiful. Do watch the movie. It is like really seriously dated, but it's extremely important. I will not tell you the story, but it's a very, very modern feminist story. So do go and watch, and this is a movie of the 60s. So like I said, even before parents were born. So that time we were making feminist films and avant-garde feminist films. Now we come to the guy who taught us how to make televisions. He's a guy I love for the simplest of reasons, because he told us how to mix your curry with sambar and chutney, and how to mash it and eat very nicely with your hands as you create a text in English. Completely without any apology, how you can own the language and how you can say, this is my language. Because before that, we had the stalwarts who were very apologetic about using English. Because English was always associated, and justifiably so, with the colonizers. So it was like it's like we are fighting the British, but we are using their language. So what are we doing? So our freedom fighters, writers from that time were justly concerned. But Salman Rushdie, 1981, Midnight Children, changes everything. Again, this is also very dated for you all. But since I'm going to take you to 1930, the writing comes as early as 1920s and 1930s. So 50 years of writing, and finally in 1981, we have Salman Rushdie who says, who am I? My answer, I'm the sum total of everything that went before me. I've seen it all. I have been seen done, or everything done to me, and everything whose being in the world affected was affected by time. Nor am I particularly exception in the matter. Each I, every one of the now 600 million plus of us, contains a similar multitude. I repeat for the last time, to understand me, you have to swallow it. Midnight Children, even if you don't read, I advise you to read it. But if you don't read, at least go and watch the not so great televised version on Netflix. It's a movie on Netflix, so you all can catch it. So you all will get to know, to give you a tantalizing storyline. When did India get its freedom? 1947. So Rushdie uses something called magic realism. Are you all aware of the term
Yes,
magic
ma'am.
realism? You are aware of the term magic realism? Okay, who are the people who are aware of the term magic realism?
It is basically the depiction of realism with magical effects in it, superficial, supernatural effects.
So, Midnight Children talks about a group of people, all of them born in 1947 at the stroke of midnight when India becomes free. And without realizing, they all manage to have a contact with each other. And they are able to communicate with each other. And then it is actually a story of the Indian political situation, changing political landscape of India, but depicted via magic realism, so that it's real, but yet you are managing to keep that distance. So it's this particular book won the Booker of Bookers, which means it won the Booker Prize, and then after 25 years, out of all the Booker awardees, this one again won. So it got the Booker of Bookers. So do it, and hard selling. And then you know why I'm asking you. Now coming back to, these are just some things I put there so that you all know. Indian writing in prose, how early does it come? So you've heard of Raja Rammohan Roy, the one who preached Brahmo Samaj, the one who's linked with Renaissance of Bengal. So he was an advocate of English education, and he was the first Indian to write prose in English. And then of course you have our good old Gandhiji, writing My Experiments with Truth, a book which you absolutely must read in order to know Gandhi. Then you have Pandit Nehru, his glimpses of world history, autobiography. And then you have other writers, I don't know if you've heard, some you would have heard. Madan Mohan Malviya, you would have heard of him. Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, you would have heard of him. They wrote copiously in English. Of course, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, after a lot of time, stopped writing in English and started writing in Bangla. But he used to do something very interesting. He actually ran a magazine where he used to have a dialogue between a Nobina and a Prachina. Nobina is a new age woman who talks about style and mannerisms. And Prachina is an old, not an old woman, but a woman with older thoughts, of cultures. So the clash of cultures, interestingly written by a man in the garb of a woman. So Nobina would answer Prachina, and Prachina would answer Nobina, and it was a huge hit. And of course, Tagore translated several of his own works. And if I dare say, they're some of the worst translations under the sun. He writes brilliantly, but the reason why the translations are how they are is because the understanding was that it has to be made easy for the foreigner to be able to understand. So earlier in DU, we used to be studying Tagore's Holiday Day or Home and the World, and it was translated by his own nephew. And it's amazing, but there were two daughters-in-law in the family. So the nephew, while translating the older daughter-in-law's role was a little less. And Vimala, of course, had a plum. So the guy who was translating, he decided that, to keep a character with a small role is too much hassle. So just deal away with the older one. So, people who got the text in English never knew that there was an older daughter-in-law of the family. So it was that brutal. Then, you could actually do away with characters because you thought that she was interfering in the grand narrative. So the translations definitely were not the best. But that was probably the only way that the larger audience could be reached. Then the poetry, you recognize Henry Louis William Thoreau. Then you have Kashi Prasad Ghosh, you have Michael Madhusudan Dutt, Manmohan Ghosh, Toru Dutt. Maybe some of you have heard of Toru Dutt at least. These are some of your poets. Unfortunately, since we can't prescribe everybody, at least have the names, so that at some point of time you might want to read them or you might want to go to them. And nowadays, since research has come very close, so immediately after your masters, you can actually do your PhD. So these are areas that that's why information is very important. You have to have that information. You've heard of Sri Aurobindo, of course, of the Aurobindo ashram in Pondicherry. He was a poet, he was a writer, so these were some of your poetry. Sri Aurobindo's very, very famous and well-known work called Savitri, a legend and a of you please come and sit here. Come here. I can't see you. Okay. And of course, the Nobel happened to Tagore because of the translation of Gitanjali, as you all know. Tagore won the Nobel Prize much before we got our freedom. And that could only happen because his works were translated into English. These are some of the names you all can see for yourselves. I wish I could teach you these, I can't. Eunice D'Souza, lovely poems, Imtiaz Bhatkar, Nina Alexander. Mr. Ezekiel also has not been prescribed, and of course A.K. Ramanujan. So the brilliant poetry that has come. Jayant Mahapatra, Keki Daruwala, Savitri. In fact, you can get, if Keki is keeping well, I don't know, but Keki loves to, we had called him to our college. He's a lovely old person who always comes when invited, but currently is battling ill health. You have Arpad Sarati, you have Ravin Kulatkar, John Moraes. Some names might be familiar, Smriti Nagoshi. And unfortunately, I don't have the time. I could spend hours talking about each of them. But at least keep the names with you so that you can go back, you can read, you can get to know them. The drama, from the earliest, you have Krishna Mohan Banerjee, Michael Madhusudan Dutt, maybe some of you have heard of him. He used to initially write in English, and then one day he decided that he could not express himself in English, and then he started writing in Bengali. So he changed languages from English to Bangla. Tagore, Sri Aurobindo, and T.P. Kailasa, and these are some of the stuff that they were writing. These are further, some more reading if you are willing to do. Manjula Padmanabhan, currently we have her states. Mahesh Dattani, we have him also. Tara.
Yes, ma'am, we had. Yes.
And then you have
Dharamveer
Bharati.
Andhayog.
Badal Sarkar, unfortunately, we know these are playwrights. Badal Sarkar, Mohan Rakesh, Vijay Tendulkar, brilliant playwrights. Even if you don't read them, I'd love for you to read them. The theatre performances happen in Mandi House. Time and again they are enacting Badal Sarkar or Mohan Rakesh. Please go watch. These are absolutely brilliant pieces of writing. I really wish I had the time and I have to unfortunately stick to the text. The novel, again I quote M.M. here. So she says that a novel can be seen as a product of configuration, which is philosophical, aesthetic, economic, and political. It goes back to the Puranic times. It talks about the hierarchical social structure, colonial education, disjunction of agrarian life, and many others affect the form of novel as well as its genre. So what is our writing all about? Our writing is about everything. So right from the field of the kisan to the mahal of the richest person to the middle class dal chawal roti that we are eating to what is happening in the city, what's happening in the villages. All of this is our collective experience, and all of these experiences, right from the partition, right from the freedom to the present times, everything finds its way into the writing by the Indian writers who write in English. So everything right from mental health to women's position to Indian feminism, you name it. These are all our topics. And of course the freedom movement, and of course the partition, which has encouraged people to write. Then of course you have some more data you may not use. Bankim Chandra Chatterjee started to write in English initially, changed again. And then the nationalistic zeal, then he stopped writing in English consciously to say, I'm rejecting English, I will only write in Bangla. And that is when you have Durgesh Nandini Kapal Gundana piece, a brilliant novel which he wrote, and Anandamai, which is celebrated, and the song, and Devi Chaudhary. These are, of course, all of them been translated into English. So, okay, these three guys are the pillars: Mulka Janam, R.K. Narayan, and Raja Rao. I I will have to start with them and I'll have to talk about them in some detail because that is from where it's like the Holy Trinity of Indian writing in English. And the Holy Trinity is Mulka Jana, R.K. Narayan and Rana. R.K. Narayan, I think all of you all know. Malguni plays.
Yes, ma'am.
Like Tana, Na, Tana, Na, Na, Na. I don't know if you've seen them. If you've seen that absolutely lovely Swami and Friends. It used to come on TV. I don't know if it comes on YouTube or something now. The song was by Gulzar Tana, so Narayan by far very, very popular. Also easy to read and understand. Mulka Jana, okay, let me discuss them at some. These photographs you can take cognizance, you can, because this is just a stock photograph. Because I thought too much of writing, we should have some photographs. So you have Sarojini Naidu, who was the Nightingale of India, as Gandhi called her. You have R.K. Narayan, you have Salman Rushdie and Mulka Jana. Normally I would not put Rushdie here, Rushdie is for much later. These three people here. So some of the writers who've given a new tone, tenor and content, these are your contemporary writers. So we are talking about the old writers, I will talk about the 1930s writers. These are your contemporary writers, Rushdie, Amitabh Ghosh, I hope you've heard of him. You must read him, Arvind Roy, Nayanthara Sehgal, Krishnan Singh, Salman. Chaman Nahal, Patishan, Arun Joshi, Chakradesh Pandey, Shobha Dey, Chitra Banerjee, Bhattacharya, Pushpan Singh, Rohit Mistry, Naipaul, Farooq Amita Desai, Hakim Mukherjee. So, some have been repeated. I'm sorry, Kiran Desai is Amita Desai's daughter. Shashi Tharoor, and Chitra Banerjee, Bhattacharya. These are diasporic writers. So some are diasporic writers, some live and write in India, and there are actually many. Amit Chaudhary, I mean, the list is endless. So we have many writers who are now writing in English, impacting. Some you might be familiar with, Amish Devgan, Devdutt Patnaik. These are writers you all might know. It's any area where there is a lot of writing, where there is a lot of impacting on that literature means it's great literature. So a lot of fantastic, fascinating literature is coming out from India, even as we speak, by writers who are writing in English. Okay, if you guys are really bored and want a break, tell me, otherwise I'll go. Okay, now the early drawings, like I told you, Mulka Jana, 1905, I want you to know the dates. 1905 to 2004. He was one of the pioneers of Indian writing in English. He was known for his protest novels, and what were the protest novels? Untouchable, followed by Coolie and Leaves in the Bud. He is known for being among the first writers to incorporate Punjabi and Hindustani idioms into English. And he was awarded the Padma Bhushan. So one of the best writers of our times, and he was writing before independence. Next, I chose this picture because this was a commemoration picture of Narayan, a commemoration stamp made for R.K. Narayan. You guys must be knowing R.K. Narayan's brother. He is equally famous. Who's R.K. Narayan's brother? Let me give you a hint. His name also begins with R. He's a cartoonist.
R.K. Lakshman.
So, Bhagwan jab leta hai na to support cartoon. So, such brilliant people. So, one brother is this brilliant writer, the next brother is this brilliant cartoonist. So, R.K. Narayan and R.K. Lakshman. R.K. Lakshman, the cartoonist, have you
Yes, ma'am.
heard of him?
Yes, ma'am. Political science.
So Narayan's mentor and friend. So just as you had Ian Foster, who was extremely impressed with Tagore and many others, Narayan did not find a publisher. Nobody was ready to publish him. Till Graham Greene read his work, and Graham Greene is this very famous writer, and Greene pushed his work, and that's how he got published. So always remember why we should call out colonialism. There were also obviously these wonderful people who were doing all of these wonderful things, otherwise we would have never read Narayan. So Narayan gave us a wealth of literature. His Swami and friends based in this fictitious town called Malgudi. And Malgudi days, as some of you might have heard of, Malgudi is literally people have been able to locate the town going by the kind of characters that R.K. Narayan created, the shoe shine, the postman, the kind of characters, the language that they speak, how they behave. It was literally that he populated the town with people that he saw around him. So much so that one could actually place the Malgudi on the map of it. So the financial expert was hailed as one of his most original works, and the guide we've already talked about won the Scientific Academy Award as well as became a great film. So this museum of Narayan's is there in Mysore. It had been taken over, then the people fought and they got it. And this is what Graham Greene has to say about Narayan. I cannot say it so beautifully, so I'm putting Greene here. Whom shall I meet next in Mount? That is the thought which comes to me when I close a novel of Mr. Narayan's. I do not wait for another novel. I wait to go out of my door into those loved and shabby streets to see with excitement and certainty of pleasure a stranger approaching, past the bank, the cinema, the hair-cutting saloon, a stranger who will greet you, I know with some unexpected and revealing phrase that will open a door onto yet another human experience. It's like when you associate with the text so much, as one would with Malgudi, you can literally start living in Malgudi. You almost feel you know the characters of Malgudi. The third person here, noted person, Raja Rao, Marcus Dates. He's an Indo-American writer. His Serpent and the Rope is very famous. He also won the Scientific Academy Award in 1963. And we read Rao for, Rao was a nationalist. And when he came back to India, he wrote an anthology of modern Indian thought from Ramana Roy to Jawaharlal Nehru. So we traced that. He participated in the Quit India movement. And finally, for Kantapura, you have the foreword of Kantapura. So what is there in the foreword of Kantapura? He's talking about this little village. I will move from here. This is Kantapura village. This is this village. This is the cover of the novel. What has he done? He has to convey the language, so he is very hesitant to write it. The foreword is actually an apology. That why am I writing in English when I'm actually fighting the English? See, he's part of the Quit India movement. He's a Gandhi. And then he rationalizes with himself that why should we throw the baby out with the bathwater? This is the language is different from the colonizer. The language is different. So the politics of language, see, we keep coming back to it over and over. So what does he do? He translates the idioms of Kannada have been transliterated into English. Now this is one of the examples. You are a traitor to your salt giver. Tum namak haram ko. Salt giver is something which only we can understand. Namak ada karna, namak haram. So writing in such a manner where you almost feel you read it Kannada rather than reading it. Though you're reading it. And he also keeps the form of oral literature because ours is an oral culture. So the story is narrated by Achaka, the grandmaster. So the way Achaka is talking, that is what is there in your foreword. So now after this, please go back and read the foreword. I think it will be able to understand it and what it is talking about. This guy is also in your syllabus. I thought he must be one of the difficult ones, which is why I brought him again here separately. Henry Louis Vivian de Rosio. Can you imagine he started teaching at 17? He must be your age, even younger. So he was appointed as professor at Hindu College at the age of 70. Was it turmoil? Ram Mohan Roy was already attacking the traditional Rudivad society with his Brahmo Samaj. And he kept his Hindu ideals, but he denied idolatry. That's what Ram Mohan Roy did, and de Rosio was a follower. He started something called Young Bengal. Young Bengal is like Young DDU and Trump. It was a group of free thinkers coming from Hindu College, Calcutta, and they call themselves Delosiers. Now, Delosier died at the age of 22. He died of cholera. Whatever he wrote was before that. So imagine, how prolific he was from 17 to 20. And by then he had this group of people, and look at I won't read out their names, but I've put them out here, just so to understand who were the people. Look at the scientific temperament. So these were the people who were bringing about a change, who were saying, look at the science, bring back scientific temperament, don't go with unscientific things. Radhanath Shikdar, somebody who was calculating the height of the Himalayas. Darshina Ranjan Mukherjee, who donated the site for Bethel College for him. So look at the people, the kind of people. Hira Chandra Ghosh was a judge of the small causes court and such like. So they all got together, Tara Chand Chakravarti, Brahma Samaj and Young Bengal. So the Young Bengal became this movement which was fighting to bring rationality into the society of Bengal. They're fighting in Bengal, but basically to India, to bring back rationality, to bring back scientific temperament. Clear? So Delosier was dismissed by many as an Anglo-Indian, as we have a habit of doing the old side. So when we discussed Henry Newton Delosier, with these things said, it's impossible to do all the authors, so let me stick to the authors, to the women authors. That way I'm also tracing the history of Indian feminism for you. So the concept of Indian feminism is extremely structured because we don't have a constant strain. Unlike the West, we don't have a first wave and a second wave and a third wave. We of course have a third wave in 1949. So Gandhiji called her the nightingale of the country because of the lyrical quality of her verses. And many of you might have read her CBSE used to prescribe Bangle sellers.
Yes, ma'am.
So we would have read her very lyrical, very beautiful. Okay. She was an Indian political activist. And she also became a governor of the United Provinces in independence India. And she was the first Indian woman to be the president of Indian National Congress. So look at her level of achievement. And that early. Women's movement. She utilized her poetry and oratory skills. You can on YouTube, you do have some of her speeches. Just listen. Kind of speeches that one could make as early as in the 1940s, and the kind of knowledge that they had. So Naidu entered the world of politics after being urged by Gopal Krishna Gokhale. She claimed that the true nation builders were women, not men, and that without women's active cooperation, the nationalist movement of India would fail. And she was right. So only when the women came out and started to fight for their freedom did the country actually gain its freedom. Otherwise, as they said, it was fighting a one-leg race with one leg tied. If the women were not co-contributors, you have kept a whole population of people bound. Then how will you win the race? Then she started the Women's India Association, which finally provided a platform for women to discuss their complaints and demand their rights. The next point we have is Kamala Das. And Kamala Das, as you know, she's known for her, the kind of poetry that she writes. She speaks for female sexuality. She speaks for her body. She speaks for her religion. She speaks for her poetry is something which really tear apart the body and look into her soul. That's what she does. So this is what she says. Some people told me that writing an autobiography is like this, with absolute honesty. Keeping nothing to oneself is like doing a striptease. True, maybe. I will firstly strip myself of clothes and ornaments. Then I want to peel off this light brown skin and shatter my bones. At last, I hope you will be able to see my homeless, orphan, intensely beautiful soul, deep within the bone, deep down under, beneath the marrow in the fourth dimension. So you can imagine what she's talking about, tearing herself out layer by layer, how she wants to reveal herself to the world. That's who she is. And then, okay. Gift him what makes you a woman, the scent of long hair. By, taking, by talking about as early as, as dates, which is 1934 to 2009, she's talking about female sexuality, which till date, unfortunately, is something which remains in the closet and is not supposed to be talked about. She came under immense criticism, needless to say. Now, one of the most sophisticated writers of the times, and she is a diaspora writer, is Anita Desai. Anita Desai was nominated for the Booker Prize. Unfortunately, she did not win it, but her daughter won it, given the Desai. So, her first novel, Coming by the People in 1963, and then she collaborated with P. Lal and founded the publisher. And P. Lal was a female professor. She considers Clear Light of Day, which is your prescribed novel, her most autobiographical work, as it is set in the same neighborhood in which she grew up. Clear Light of Day, in 1984, earlier we used to study In Custody, now we are doing Clear Light of Day, about the Urdu poet and his declining days, which was shortlisted for the book. And in 1993, she became the creative writing teacher at MIT. So, incredible career, as we can see, and she's still there, she's still the chair at MIT. In 1999, she was a Booker Prize finalist with a novel, and then another novel, The Zigzag Way. We know that Clear Light of Day is set in post-partition. I will go on to Clear Light of Day since that is in your course. Some things which you all know, but these are your basic pointers, you will flesh these out. Storyline deals with family, needs, love, longing, despair. Women are seen to be the worst sufferers. They are either seen in nurturing roles, so Bimala is the nurturer, or as abdicators. So Tara has run away. Meera Masi gives up her life because she develops a drinking problem because she was not accepted by the society. So it's a story about pain. It's a story about how a woman is treated within the society. So much so, with so much disregard that she has a drinking problem and she eventually dies because of a drinking problem. Then the religious tension is there, resulting in loss of neighbors, and eventually Raja also runs away to Hyderabad. The neighbors already have to abdicate in Nawab's family. They are forced to move to Hyderabad. The novel is extremely musical and poetic. So you have the books which they are reading, which tell us what were the kind of books that they were reading, and poetic, the poetry of T.S. Eliot and Iqbal. So it's very, very interesting that you have Iqbal being talked about constantly, and you have music. There is Baba's gramophone, which is playing constantly, and the kind of music which Baba listens to. And finally, you have that recital at Mishra's place. So In Custody is entirely about this whole, this decadent movie poet. Here also you have it in fits and you have it all there. And you will eventually breaking into music once his musicians come back, and what are they singing? They are singing Kawan. So look at the kind of, and this is post-partition. So what is the point that Desai is trying to make? That you might have divided the country. You might have made a us and them. But how do you divide a person's psyche, which is made of Urdu and Hindi? Urdu, Hindi, English. Urdu, Hindi, English, Bengali. Your psyche is created of that. How do you separate that? And if you can't separate that, what was the sense of separating the nations? That agony is always there. And that is why the loss of space, people moving out, reclaiming spaces. So unfortunately, Clear Light of Day is not seen as a part because nobody moves. Nirmala and her family, Nirmala, continue to remain in that old house. And that old mainly house becomes, that the house is normally supposed to give you comfort, there's a homecoming. Here the house is fraught with immense amounts of tensions. So it's as if the whole partition in volume is being played out inside the house. And then how it gets resolved when Vimala is finally able to forgive and tries to do that. And of course, the position of the women, and of course there's so much humor, particularly Dr. Biswas is, he's a musical, he's gone to Europe and he has he appreciates Beethoven and Bach, which is quite amazing. And so it's a novel about belonging, separation, nation building through debilitating races. All of this you see in this novel. Last but not least, we have Manjula Padmanabhan and the States. So she's an Indian playwright, journalist, comic strip artist. States is an extremely powerful story. Years of civilization too, and he chokes on the words to female hygiene products. Because she says, I will now not use tampons and all that, I use sanitary pads, which is for animal. And Sarah says yes, and she says we know this is a play, this is a short story. It's about culture, it is about cultural historicism, which displays to an extent. He's completely shot down by the African American woman Sarah. And it is a deep dive into menstrual taboo as it exists in the country and what Sarah was forced to undergo and the Kumar's guestings. And now I began with him, he was there somewhere in between. I will end with him. So Rushdi and 1947 was when he was born. So Midnight Student is partly his story, mostly imaginative. He's an Indian-born British American novelist. Combines magic realism with historical fiction. Talks about disruptions, migrations between Eastern and Western civilizations set in the 18th century. Wonderful cover because this is his most recent book called Life. You get a fantastic cover. What do we get from? What is that Rushdie gives us? Why am I coming back to him over and over again? Unapologetic use of it. Rushdie does not say sorry for using it. He says this is a language which was given to me, so I will use it. I'll use it as a sword. I will use it as my pen. I'll use it in whichever way, and I'll use it as my own. Another thing which he gives us is the concept of personal histories. So he creates a history. He says history is not only what is written in history books. 1947 this happened, 1948 this happened, 1950 this happened. He says history is what you and I know. What did your daddy go through? What your nanny went through? When you went to college, what happened? These are the stories which create personal histories. And personal histories create actual histories. Rather than history as we understand compendium of chronological dates. Creation of a concept of imaginary homelands. So when you travel from one place to the other, you do not live in the same place and you don't have to go to a foreign country. Let us say some of you live in Bihar but have lived in Delhi for many years. Or some of you live in some other part and then you come and live in some other part. But what do you do over there? You start performing, you start cooking the food from your mother's kitchen. You start performing the rituals which you have seen your elders do. So effectively in that quote-unquote foreign land, you are creating imaginary homelands. And that imaginary homeland is extremely real. So that is why that little Gopika protein which travels, or this little, and mostly how imaginary homelands are created are through storytellers. So this is what used to happen, this is what we used to do, this is how things were done. And you have this beautiful depiction in Amitabh Ghosh's the first Ibis trilogy, where they're being taken in that ship and they're crossing the Kala Pani, and the belief system was that if you cross Kala Pani, you have fallen, you can never come back. It's over. You have lost your caste because you've crossed Kala Pani. So there, when they're crossing the Kala Pani, there's a wedding that they organize, and from somebody's little pottery, and these are all poor people who have been sold off. They're going as slaves to Mauritius. From somebody's little pottery, one little haldi comes out. From some other person's pottery, and Bhagavad Gita comes out, from something, and then they go about, they sing the ladies' songs before wedding, and all of this they do under the, they're not allowed to come up to the ship deck because they're slaves. So all of this being done underneath the slave quarters and effectively creating the so-called imaginary home. So, and then I quote from these imaginary homelands, and this is what he says. Sometimes we feel we straddle two cultures at a time, and we fall between two stools. He's extremely irreverent, his humor is great. It may be argued that the past is a country from which we have all emigrated, that its loss is part of our common humanity. So it's like we've carried our past, but we've emigrated with our past. And I end with this. This is from imaginary homelands. All of us, whatever our background, to constantly examine the stories. The most important, most powerful things that we have are our stories. Keep having those stories. We live in our stories. We live in our oral narratives. We live in our grand narratives. Our nation in itself is a story. It's a story that we have created about our nation. Community is a story. We all live within and with these narratives. And the definition of any living, vibrant society is that you constantly question these stories. Don't take anything for a given. If somebody tells you 5,000 years in the past this happened, do not believe it just like that. Ask the relevant question and read up. So the stories also have to be questioned. The stories are also not given because we are not storytellers. We are creating our stories. And the argument itself is a freedom. So where is our freedom? Of you and me, all of us put together when we can ask questions. It's not that you come to a conclusion about it and through that argument you change your mind. And that's how societies grow. When you can't retell for yourself the stories of your life and then you live in prison, somebody else controls the story. So if somebody else is controlling your narrative, you have become a prisoner to their story. Like the African proverb which you must have read, unless the lion learns to tell his story, it will always be the story of the hunter. So we need to tell our stories. We need to tell our stories the way we like to tell them. We can say it in whatever language we can, a mixture, a chutney of Indian, Hindi, English, whatever that we are able to speak in, writing, thinking. And we should have the grace and the ability to question the stories, to live via the stories, and to create new stories as we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure I've got a short and you guys have been a very, very set of
I have a question. So, I would like to go back to the 3 points that you had given.
The projector.
It is actually about the 3 points that you had given of about whom to call an Indian writer in English. So you had said the translation, the people who do the translation, the diasporic writers, and the people who have English as their third or second language. So I would like to know how, like, in the trajectory, where do we place authors like Ruth Jhabwala, and there is an author Konrad Elst who is from Norway, but he lives in Varanasi and writes about Indian politics. So where do we place these authors?
Obviously, is the first category, somebody who studied in English and impacts and religion types. The second person that you talked about, was he or she writing in English?
Yes,
He
yes.
writes in English.
It's an acquired language. Is it an acquired language?
Yes, acquired.
So
He's
it's an
from.
acquired language, and then they talk about the story of the land in which they live, which may not be their motherland, but it's the land of, a land which you adopted. It's a land of adoption. So then you tell the stories of the land of adoption through a language which you have also learned. So a great example that happens all the time. You guys have not read Conrad, very shortly into it. So Conrad's Love in Darkness. And Conrad is not a native English speaker. He learns it along the way when he was much older. So you know, so but like currently Jitma Nandini is writing in Italian, which is very definitely not her language. She's a Bengali who was writing in English, and now she's lived and she's learned Italian, and she wants to write in Italian, which is, she's come under a lot of criticism for that. But that's the choice. So maybe all there. That's somebody from it's an adopted language and they're talking about their adopted country through that adopted language.
So do we call them Indian writers in English? Because they are not Indians.
You can only call them Indian writers in English if they have an Indian nationality or if they're grown up here. Like say Rupi doesn't have an Indian it's abroad. But we have claimed it because he's lived in Bombay.
Also, we have a term for them, diasporic writers. What do we call authors like Ruth Zapal?
So yeah, so authors like Japana are, they are the first set, live, studied in English, and they are telling their story from that perspective. So you don't have to neatly slot. It's not as if it's like you're doing a with an exam to go in one place and the other needs to go one place. You can happily flow into each
So
other.
there is no black and white. The area is very clear.
The beauty of literature is you can, it's free flow. You can flow from one into the other.
Thank you.
How did it go?
You mentioned that precisely that it is not seen as a partition now.
Maybe speak a little louder so
Do you think that displacement is a necessary theme for any post-partition or any partition now?
for the part, no, not really. See, the question, the clear light of day is an obvious question. So technically that has not been expressed. The house continues to exist. And yet it is a partition.
You're saying that it's not really considered as much as a partition novel as
Because the rest of the, what we, in our common parlance, our common partition novels, are either novels, where you have, like Train to Pakistan, where dead bodies are coming from one place to the other and going from another place to another place, so those are, or Manto. So these are basically, talking about the partition and only the partition and the trauma of the partition. So somehow in our minds also, they have been classified as, but I would very definitely call this a partition. So again, we shouldn't have those kind of
Blocks, divides.
blocks and not boxes.
How many students from Bharti here? Wonderful. How are you all? Keep coming for other lectures also.
Exactly, quite impressed with these are not the kinds who generally move out in the way. I really must say that this was maybe the college was more accessible. Was it? I don't know.
So many years ago, what we used to do, I have spoken about it, we were based out of the Karampura campus. And we had these colleges close by in West Delhi, 7 of them. And we were an institution in itself because we would insist that our students went to these 7 colleges and we could take them go all the way to the main chapters. And similarly, they are
Migrated to our college.
So you asked everybody to come?
Yeah, I said to them, I posted the poster on Instagram also, so that they can know.
Wonderful. So we should keep creating these synergies and these ecosystems and learn from each other. Instead of being in small closeted colleges, classrooms.
Because I feel sorry for our students who lived on campus.
Yeah.
They would used to have so much fun.
Absolutely.
All over the place. And here they have nowhere to go really.
Yeah, we could have